Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who make the world better locally, globally, and digitally. Rotary is a service organization with 1.2 million people in 36,000 clubs. We'll up that to 1.4 million if we count all the cool Rotaractors that are out there as well. These are all people who are dedicated to service above self, that thought that you can spend your time and talent and some treasure just making good things happen through great projects that your club does, that you are encouraged to do as a function of connections in your club and in the organization. All good stuff. If you want to learn more about Rotary, go to rotary.org. And if you want to learn about our club specifically, go to rotary.cool. Thank you. So, our speaker today is a professor based in San Antonio, Texas. I can tell you all sorts of things about her university because it's the one I went to way back in the day. So, I'm really excited to have her here to share the stories of philosophy and literature and their potential for those who are incarcerated. Judith, welcome to the Rotary E Club of Silicon Valley. We hand the mic over to you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's so important for me to sort of bring you some of the stories about our program and the ethos of our program because I think it does have a transformative potential. And the more people who know about it, I think but the better place the world becomes. Right? That's the modest task that I'm setting for myself. But Philosophy and Literature Circle is a program that brings university students into carceral spaces, prisons and jails, to create learning circles together with scholars who are incarcerated at the units. And we run a session. We run 3 sessions a year, and each session lasts approximately 12 weeks. So for 12 weeks, students from a university, local university, go into the unit, meet with a group of scholars, the same scholars each week, and together we read fantastic works of literature and philosophy. It's a distinctive program because often sort of like education in carceral spaces, like prisons, is technical education or financial skills, woodworking, sort of job training, and all of that is fantastic. But we believe that the humanities has a vital place in terms of, human thriving. It expands our world. It gets us to sort of notice things, to ask questions, and it challenges us to build, stronger, more just communities. And so we don't think of humanities education as sort of like a frill or value added or just as sort of like a pretty place to work on writing skills, but getting to the base of what it means to be a human being, and that a thriving life, the good life, involves encountering those questions. So in the prison, we and the combined cohort of undergraduate students and incarcerated scholars read works. We read a lot of Plato. We read short stories of Langston Hughes and Louise Erdrich, African American experience, Native American experience. We often read the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest book, a fantastic classic that speaks to us as if it was written yesterday. It's thrilling. And poems, so many poems. Currently, I'm doing a unit on Aztec ethics, right? The ethics that came out of, Aztec culture as we can sort of reconstruct it as was recorded. And a number of the incarcerated scholars have come from households where the language of the Aztecs, Nahua, is still sort of alive and spoken. And so they feel a real closeness to some of these philosophical traditions. And as a philosophy professor, it's important for me that philosophy not be a highfalutin word or, a scary, intimidating credential, but something that people do naturally, that comes naturally to us when we ask about how to live a good life, right? And that these philosophical traditions are part of all of our cultural heritages. So, a brief history of the program. The Philosophy and Literature Circle was established by a fantastic scholar and just all-around human being, Dr. Mel Webb. In 2019, Dr. Webb came to the University of Texas at San Antonio and started to bring students from there into the Dominguez State Jail, which is in San Antonio. That program went so well that the warden and some of the administrators asked Mel to expand the program. One of the reasons it was going well is because it's a fantastic program and people loved it. Another reason that it was going well is that it made the prison safer, right? The incarcerated scholars moved into their identity as philosophers and students and scholars, and people to whom the great heritage of literature belongs. And so, guards on the unit got to see them not as, uh, not as criminals, right? But as scholars. And the sense of respect within the carceral space just sort of like increased. The incarcerated scholars would come back from the class with their homework and bring and repeat the lesson in some of their day rooms, to their cellmates, to some of the people in the dorms. And so the lessons would have legs, they would sort of spread. And it started to change the culture in the prison. And so they asked Dr. Webb to expand the program. Dr. Webb came to me at Trinity University, also in San Antonio, and we opened up a second branch of the Philosophy Literature Circle, working out of Trinity University, go Tigers, and visiting the Torres unit, which is a medium security men's prison in Hondo, Texas, about an hour away. And we've been operating there for the past 5 years as well. We're looking into expanding to a third university paired with a third carceral site. And so this program, we're really hoping to expand it. So you might notice, I mean, some of the terms that I've been using, the scholars that we work with are incarcerated scholars. We use that vocabulary. Is it at all possible for me to share my computer screen? I know I sprung this on you.
Absolutely. Feel free.
Okay, so I'm going to do this and let y'all see just a document that we work with. Can you all see the Center for New Leadership?
Absolutely.
Okay. We take this letter seriously. This is an open letter to our friends in the question of language by a formerly incarcerated scholar, or a scholar who was formerly incarcerated, asking us to change our language when we talk about people who are incarcerated. I'll point you to this paragraph. In an effort to assist our transition from prison to our communities as responsible citizens and to create a more positive human image of ourselves, we're asking everyone to stop using negative terms, right? Like, inmate, felon, convict, and simply refer to us as people. People currently or formerly incarcerated, people on parole, people released recently from prison, people in prison, people with criminal convictions, but people. And the letter goes on, it's a very short letter, to talk about why. And towards the end it says, simply refer to us as people. We've achieved a significant step forward in our life, giving struggle to be recognized as the human beings we are. We've made our mistakes, but we've paid or are paying our debts to society. We believe we have the right to be called by a name we choose rather than one someone else decides to use. We think that by insisting on being called people, we reaffirm our right to be recognized as human beings, not animals, inmates, prisoners, or offenders. And so that's a request that, we try to honor. We think that trapping somebody in a term that just sort of like repeats the worst thing they've ever done, right? Sort of trap them in the worst thing they've ever done, doesn't allow for the sort of growth that we want to recognize in the circle. This reflects one of the bedrock principles of our program, which is uh, uh, we think, I mean, it's an educational program, but I've come to realize, and I've been teaching for 30 years, right? It took me 25 years and this program to realize that learning works best. The creation and sharing of knowledge works best. The joy in knowledge works best in communities that are built on sort of like, respect. Uh, that classrooms shouldn't be just sort of like, sit down, shut up, take your pencil out, and I'm going to drop some knowledge on you, right? But that this sort of like a moral foundation of respect and community and feeling supported and safe, right, is necessary for people to be able to learn. And a lot of people incarcerated, a lot of people who aren't incarcerated have suffered various forms of educational, harm, violence, being dismissed, being told that they're stupid, being sort of like having their curiosity quashed because it was inconvenient at a certain point. And that's just not the sort of world I want to live in. That's not the sort of learning I want to grow into. And so in the circle, we take our shape very seriously. We sit in a circle. I don't stand at the front of the room, except when I'm getting very excited and jumping up and down. We sit in a circle where we all come in as learners and teachers. We establish a principle that, every voice matters, every voice belongs, everybody has something to offer, even if it's just your curiosity, right? That's really important. Uh-huh. Even if it's questions, people have something to offer, and we take time to think about how to form a community based in respect and trust, because only then can people speak up, right? And when you go into a prison, you're talking about a group of people who've been told by society, by the very shape of the buildings that they're housed in, that they don't matter, right? That their voices don't count, that they've put themselves out of, the uh, reach of decent human beings. And so to start to sort of like, create a community in which people feel like they have a role. And I do think that social harm is best dealt with when people have a stake in society, right? They feel like there's something in it for them. They feel like that they have something to lose by being a creator of social harm. By creating a society in which people feel respected, it's stunning what can happen. And so this is a situation where the barriers to be overcome are significant, right? Some of the hardest barriers to overcome. And so we have to be so intentional in how is respect created in a learning situation? How does it show up in the classroom in order for us to do the sort of learning that we want? So this program, I think I'm running over. I'll finish in a minute. It's not a charity, right? We don't bring anything into the prison. We don't give, right? We take our bodies there and then we create something together with the men who are there. Oh, they have agency. They're not the receivers. They're the co-creators of a community of trust and the co-creators of the knowledge, right, that we're able to circulate. That I have not been looking at the clock, and I think I am probably way over, but we could continue this conversation in the Q&A.
Absolutely. Well, I love the message that you've got for us. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment so that we can interview or actually I should say introduce the group that we've got, and then we will jump into our Q&A. So as you have met, Judith Norman is in San Antonio, Texas. Dr. Norman is a professor, distinguished professor at Trinity University there. I am in San Jose, California, as part of the Rotary E Club of Silicon Valley, and our two members with us are Dave Andrew in Tucson, Arizona, and Ernie Rodriguez, currently in Colorado, but often in Catalina, on Catalina Island. And so it is exciting for us to have exactly the kind of conversation that Judith, you have pointed us to, because this is very much a conversation about hope, about the hope that things can be better, the hope that people who might have been a problem for society in some sense before can become those who solve problems. And so I love that there is an attention to the language, the opportunity to tell someone you're paying your dues and you have this other side of who you are. Can you start by talking to us a little bit about what happens over the course of 12 weeks? Is there a class? Is there credit? Is it just for the love of learning? How does it structure?
Thank you. Great question. Yeah, over the 12 weeks, we meet every week for about 2.5 hours at the carceral unit. Um, it is for the university students who go out, it is a college class, or an experiential element of a college class that they're taking. For the incarcerated scholars, we do not yet have permission to run it as a credit-bearing class. In many ways, that's the gold standard. But yeah, it's sort of logistically complicated, and it's something we'd like to work towards. But Dr. Webb when they initiated the class asked some of the scholars, is this worth doing if not for credit? And they, 1,000 times yes, right? This is good in itself. And so we're running it as a sort of, college discernment, a volunteer program at the units.
And a question from the chat: how many scholars currently participate, and how do they get to be part of it?
Excellent. Thank you. At each unit, for each session, there's about 15 scholars as well as about 15 university students, trying to keep with the parity, right? And they self-select. The criteria is that the applicants have to have some high school or high school equivalency degree. Uh, we would want to sort of, not put constraints in terms of how long they've been there, how long they have to go, the severity of the charges. I mean the prison system has constraints that they put on the program as well. But yeah, at this point, we desire to take all comers, and everybody can get something out of it, put something into it, get something out of it. Um, I am in love with Rory's cat. I have a cat that's like that. I'm a huge cat person. There are a lot of stray cats at the unit, and that's always something lovely to see.
Well, I can imagine that like poetry, animals can be a source of incredible healing, right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
Talk a little bit about the preparation of the UTSA and Trinity students who participate in the program, and how they can be in the proper frame of mind for being of service to these people in prison.
Absolutely. Thank you. We do a lot of work. To prepare people and to prepare ourselves. I'm a learner in this space too, and the whole experience of incarceration and the effect that it has on society is something that I'm really deepening in my knowledge of, and how to interact in a way that sort of like helps promote justice as opposed to reinforcing some of the injustice, in society. I find in myself sort of instincts and just muscle memory that has a sort of punitive bent, that has a sort of punitive framework that tends towards prejudice and injustice, and I'm constantly working on that in myself. So working on ourselves is a huge aspect of it. The university students, we don't want to advertise this class as come to a prison, sort of like it's wilderness adventure, exotic. We don't want to exoticize the men who we're visiting, right? This is I mean, as the letter said, we're going in to visit human beings, right? Who, like everybody else in this universe, should not be equated with the worst thing they've done, right? So we sort of talk to the university students and to ourselves. It's sort of like, think of the worst thing you've done. What if that becomes your identity? And sort of like, no, please. And so we don't talk to the incarcerated scholars about the nature of why they're there. They might choose to share it, But that's not really part of the educational experience. It's like walking into a room and asking somebody, "What's the worst thing you've ever done?" You know, it's just it's not something I want to know about people. And when before I started visiting the unit, I imagined I'd be very curious. It's like, "Ooh, what are they did? What did they do?" And I found within a couple weeks that curiosity not only dropped away, but it became distasteful for me. I don't want to know the worst of my students. I don't want to know the worst of my colleagues, the people who I'm learning alongside. I want them to come, and show me what they can be, right? And so that was a huge change in my mindset. The amount of, for the university students to come and, they have good intentions, this is a good thing to do. They have a desire to overcome their prejudices, and so they come in meaning well and are stunned, right? Just by, they come in intending to think everybody is really smart. And then they realize how smart everybody is, right? Really is. And it sinks into their body, and they're like, my God, right? This is, there's just so much going on here. There's such a wealth of knowledge that we can create together. And so there's a real difference between sort of knowing it in theory and knowing it in practice and having it sort of sink into your body and to wonder of yourself, how am I continuing to perpetuate injustice that puts these brilliant voices out of play? Right. And of course, the question of languages is sort of like that's a very it's a good starting point because it's easy to understand. The language helps put these voices out of play. It helps sort of confine people in some of their uh, 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 distasteful identities, right? But also just how do I hold my body in this space? Right? How do I sort of like overcome my prejudices and extend trust? How do I practice the respect that I wish to practice? We all work on that. Yeah. As a condition for being able to read Plato together and have it be glorious. And the prison classroom is a place of joy. I can't tell you, we're crying in happiness, we're laughing, we're just, the 2.5 hours goes by like you've never seen. And then when we exit the classroom, we get to see the bars and the barbed wire. And it's just like an offense against the nature of the community that we've put together. It's like, that's right. We're in
Yeah.
prison. Um,
So your comment about Plato actually like predicted my next question, which is, are there poems or works of literature or philosophers or particular perspectives that have been especially meaningful to the people that you get a chance to work with?
yes. I want to, there's one poem in particular that we always read together by Mary Oliver called Wild Geese. Um, it's it begins, the first lines. I'm sorry, I'm going to share it again. It's a poem that sums up our ethos. I won't read the whole thing, although it's not hugely long, but I'd love everybody to sort of like, take a look at it. Um, uh, can you all see it?
We can see it. It's small print.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it?
Oh, I'd love that.
I'm happy to do so. So, wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert oak repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. That's a beautiful poem.
It's a beautiful poem and it's a kind poem. You don't have to be good, right? For what? You don't have to be good to belong. You don't have to come in and repent and say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You just need you're part of the earth. You're part of the human community. There's no place, you're whoever you are, no matter how lonely the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. You're part of the family of things. We all are. Here we are in this crazy, horrible, beautiful planet, and we need to be here together. How are we going to do that? You know? And the poem is an invitation to sort of wonder, how we can all, acknowledge that we all belong together on
Mm.
this planet. And uh yeah, and to start to work on the sort of communities that's needed to realize this vision. And to take as a model for our communities, the earth, right? Which everything on Earth belongs on Earth, right? You're part of announcing your place in the family of things. And everybody always points out wild geese are horrible, right? They're loud, they bite people, they leave, this sort of slimy droppings. It's sort of like, but they're beautiful going across the sky, going home. And, the idea of going home is also very close to the hearts of the scholars inside. You get to go home. And we think about and some people don't have home, but we think about the prison classroom as a form of home, right? If your voice belongs, you get to be here. We're modeling justice and community, right? And compassion. And that's new. That's not something that we bring into the prison. It's not like, here we are, the savior is coming to bring compassion and stuff. That's something we just come in as sort of like, bumpy, messed up university nerds. And when we get into the prison classroom, this is something justice and community and belonging is something we create together with the scholars. And we feel it. Everybody feels that. Huh? And we get to feel that this is what justice looks like. One of the scholars who has been incarcerated since childhood, um, said at one point, this is the nicest thing that's ever happened to him. Um, and uh, yeah, it's one of the nicest things that's ever happened to me. It's I can't tell you how meaningful this is to all of us.
That's fantastic. I will ask you one more question. We are quite proud of having had the opportunity to meet so many really fascinating people from all over the world. And one of those people is Jody Lynn, right, of Mount Tam College. And when I contacted you about the possibility of speaking to us, you were here in the Bay Area, and I said, "Oh, there's this Mount Tam College," and you're like, "I'm here to see her." Let's draw a line between that presentation and this one with maybe some thoughts that come from your conversations with Jody.
Yeah, thank you. I found in I mean, Jody is very much an inspiration for our current project. I mean, to not to create not just, a single class, but an entire university inside, to run it, through COVID and funding cuts and all sorts of disasters, is a testament to, and I've seen some of the alumni coming out of Mount Tam College and their sense of, that they belong, right? I think what Jody has done for democratizing education is of just inestimable value. Education, the ability to and philosophical humanities education to sort of contribute, not just to sort of go to a class and learn, but to contribute to questions of what is human flourishing is tremendous. I and the Trinity students, this is a humanities class. they'll have to take a humanities class as part of their education and whatever. What does humanities mean? But these texts that we're looking at, right? They pose the question, what does it mean to be a human being, right? What is human being? And for Trinity students and for people like me, it's just sort of like this is, I'm a nerd. It's sort of like I love to sort of think about that. This is of sort of important of interest to me. I can, but for people who are in situations where their humanity is literally in question, where it's being taken away from them, these texts mean something a lot more, right? These texts hold out the answers. It's like, people dying of thirst, and this is some water for them, right? And the humanities is needed, yeah, in order to urgently confront questions about the nature of how, to rehumanize people who've been sort of whose humanity has been put into question. And the Trinity students get to see that these questions matter. This isn't just a distribution requirement that they're, being forced to take for the sake of graduation. And I get to see that it matters too, right? Which again, I've taught this stuff for 30 years. I've been in school all my life, right? And I've known that this is interesting. I've known that this is fun, but I never knew that it mattered the way that I now am finding out. And again, so the incarcerated scholars, I'm not kidding. They are teachers too. Being in that space is a transformative learning experience for me. I'm not bringing stuff. I'm sort of participating in the learning that gets created in these circles.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll wind it down and then hand it back to you for a final word. For all of you who've taken time to watch this recording or listen to this podcast, thank you for spending your time with us. We believe that there is a certain joy and meaning that comes from being involved in service to others, just like you've heard described as a part of this message. And we hope that you will take time to learn a little bit more about Rotary or any other service organization that allows you to tap into that outlet. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Dr. Norman, Judith, what would you like people to have clearly in mind as they finish the recording?
Well, I'm afraid to be crass. I have to tell you that we accept donations, right?
That's all
That
right.
this site, giving.utsa.edu/the circle, that this is we've received generous, donations from the Mellon Foundation. And I need to acknowledge them as being an incredibly generous funder and, a robust funder in these times of loss of federal funding. So really grateful to them. But this is a thirsty program in terms of funds. And yeah, giving.utsa.edu/the circle, one word. I also want to say that, my experience is that there's so much brilliance behind bars, right? There's so much potential. That's, it's, and it's sad that that's the case. And that's something we ought to understand as a loss to society. And I don't know what sort of like acknowledging that looks like for you. It looks like different things for different people, prison reform or being part of a pen pal project, or there's many ways to support the work of scholars behind bars. Um, but um, but it's needed. There's so many things going wrong with this world that we don't have any say in, but this is something that we could.
Thank you, and thank all of you for taking part, and we will see you next week.